Not really, because it is a 24 hours a day, all-consuming job, and I think it only struck home to me last week, believe it or not, when I went up to Scotland with the family, with Sharon and the kids, Amy and William, and the phone never went football-wise. Yes, I was doing my book and all the one or two things like that, but all I was concentrating, when I woke up in the night, I was thinking about quad biking the next day, or trout fishing and learning to trout fish and canoeing, and all the things where normally I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about agents and players and board of directors and how I was going to do this and pre-season training. There's so many things about in a manager, and in a way that is why I wrote the book originally, because when I was at Palace I thought that would be my last club, and I thought it'd be nice just to let the ordinary Mr. Joe public read about what it's like behind the scenes. I didn't know I was opening myself a can of worms from Palace onwards. Sharon let me go to Leeds. I wanted one more year, one more chance of getting another promotion, and I was close to getting the Wolves job. But when I went to Leeds, she said, you know, she didn't mind me having a go, but my oldest son was there and my grandson was there. But she said, look, I can't upheaval again. William's 11. Amy had been in boarding school for 3 years, and she's supposed to be only doing 1 year. So we agreed that if I went to Leeds, the kid was going to stay at home in Cornwall, and you know, and so it was difficult for me being sort of 350 mile away without the family. That it hit home to me how important they are, because I think when you're with your family, you are a better person, and you can do things a lot easier. Especially when you're a family man, and I am. You know, I think that my kids and my wife are very important to me. So they have to put up with so much, really, and you don't realise until you're not in it just what they have to put up with. Because, you know, I mean, not only in that book, I did an autobiography a few years ago, and we were talking about kids on the playground. You know, one having a go at William when we got beat 5, I think it was at QPR, and we got beat 5 at Fulham. Yeah. And one or two fans, you know, your dad's getting sacked in the morning, and you know, people having a go at Amy for one or two things, you know. And when I was leaving Sheffield United, or thought about leaving, you know, if he goes as a turncoat, and you know, and you don't realise they come home in tears, you know, and you're away from that, because when you're a manager, you've got a thick skin, so you can take, you know, I mean, if I didn't have a thick skin, I'd never go to an away game. Sure. the stuff I've been called. It wasn't difficult at all. Leeds is a fantastic club and massive support. And even at Sheffield United, I used to love playing at Leeds, because the fans are, you know, Yorkshire people are, it's their lives really, the football. So with my oldest son being there as well, I think I felt that I got a chance of getting that promotion if I could, you know, wheel and deal. I knew the situation wasn't perfect financially, but I thought I could try and, you know, and we weren't far away. But I think it would have taken 2 years rather than 1 year. But I want to do it there and then, because I didn't want to be away from my family more than 12 months. So it was 6 or 1/2 dozen others. I couldn't quite do it, but we did an awful lot at Leeds. You know, to steady the ship with all the. When I went there, a lot of unrest, a lot of demonstrations against the chairman and things like that. And I think I quietened all that down and kept it going and changed the squad, which for the better, I think. Brought a few young lads through, like Byram, who was going to be a top player, and it's in a better situation than it was. But Sheffield United as well, you know, fabulous club for me as well. So it was good. You know, I managed at Huddersfield, so I've done a few in Yorkshire and played for a few in Yorkshire. It's been an interesting life in football. I think if you had a word with all the fans, you know, I think they'd take everything with a pinch of salt, really.
Were you personally hurt by it, or?
No, not really. Not coming from Ken Bates, no.
But your relationship was in.
I was all right. Yeah, it wasn't bad. He was, you know, it was hard work for me, because you know, Ken always made the statements that I'd signed every player that I wanted or I ever asked for. So that must have been on one of his good days, because I didn't sign anywhere near the players I wanted. You know, I could give him 5 or 6 that I tried to sign, but you know, we couldn't quite manage to do that financially. So it was hard work, but you know, he wanted to sell it, and I think I steadied the ship for all the people that were demonstrating against him then. And I think if I hadn't come in, I don't think he'd have sold the club. I think it would have gone to the dogs really.
Yeah.
But I steadied the ship, and then, of course, when the takeover came, it was 7 months. It should have been 7 weeks, really.
Did you feel misled by that? And should Leeds fans feel misled by the whole takeover process? And that the money
I think they're the right people, but you know, no takeover should take that length of time, really.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to get things done in the circumstance. If I was 10 years younger or 5 years younger, it wouldn't have bothered me, because I would have known that I could do it in 2 years. Are you with me? But I wanted to do it in 1 year.
Yeah.
So, talking to them in July about players, to then get to Christmas almost before it was finalised is, it was really, and I got on really well with the new people. I was instrumental in talking to them and convincing them it was the right club for them, which, obviously the chairman didn't complain then,
Sure.
because I think I was his biggest salesman to get rid of the club, and I'm sure they will be the right people, but they want, coming in, they wanted to get their feet under the table before they started splashing the money out, and I understand that to a point, but it was disappointing for me that we couldn't buy 2 or 3 decent players in January, really. Well, Plymouth, down, you get past Bristol and you think it's the beyond, you've gone into the, into the wilderness.
Yeah.
But Devon and Cornwall's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world, and I've always tried to help. I've always tried to take teams down there and try to play as many games. I think one season, about 2 years ago, I took 3 different teams: the reserves, first team reserves, and youth team. I played 12 teams in Cornwall, all and around in different times, and I still got 2 writing to me complaining. I thought, you can't win here, can you really? But when I helped Torquay out when I left Notts County.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it at Torquay, and it gave me my my buzz back in football. I enjoyed it. All of a sudden I'd been in the top flight with Notts County, and to go to Notts County to Torquay, they were almost getting kicked out of the league, bottom league. Everybody thought it was committing suicide by doing something like that, but I didn't do that. I love the sea. I love Torquay, and I thought, no, it's a good challenge. And I got people on £100 a week going through brick walls for me, and I loved it. And so I got them safe, and then went up to Huddersfield, had a good time up there, and then eventually the offer came, and I had a couple of good job offers at Derby County and a few others at the time, but I knew the chairman at Plymouth, an outspoken chap, Dan Macaulay, but I quite liked him and his wife, and we loved the area. We'd been to Polperro and a few places around that in Cornwall, and we thought it would be nice, Sharon and I thought it would be nice to set up home there. And that's what we did. And we were 20 miles from Plymouth, and we loved every minute of it. And that's why it's a special place for us. We've kept that all the time. I've moved around since, and we decided we were definitely going to go back there when I called it a day. You're bound to get a little bit disgruntled, aren't you, when you get relegated on 1 goal, and you get a club warned months before the end of the season that they're doing wrong, and then they're given assurances that they're not doing wrong, and they accept that, then to find out that they are doing wrong, and give them 25 million in fines. It doesn't help me, does it? That's got the sack. It doesn't pay me my staying up bonus that I should have had. And yet Sheffield United got 25 million quid out of it. Well, I mean, didn't spending money on the East End affect my signings? No, the answer is no, because that was already done when I came. I think a lot of the finances was already spent the following years as well, I think, by all accounts, what GFH told me. That, some of the money had already been spent from the following season, what have you. But I think you have to look at it. People want me to have a go at Ken Bates because he said he'd sack me if he'd have been. But I quite like Ken and his wife Susanna, and we had good company. The problem was he spent this money, and that will always be there now. The infrastructure is second to none. So that's now all the new owners have got to do is spend money on the team. There's nothing else needs spending, And I thought last season we were very, very close. I think a couple of million net last year. The players we mentioned early on in the summer. We mentioned people like Ward at Palace, and we mentioned Keogh at Derby, who went to Derby, from Coventry. We mentioned Craig McElsmith, who was going away from Brighton at that time. 3 or 4 top quality players, I think would have made a difference to us, and I think we'd have gone up. But that's all in the past. I think now everything's geared for the club now, and the fans should look forward to a future now. I never quite got on with the academy people at Leeds for whatever reason. They never seemed to take to me, etc. Whereas Brian McDermott has known Gwyn Williams and he's known Neil Redfern for many years. So theoretically, it should all be perfect now. There shouldn't be any reason now not to be successful, because they all get on well. I'm sure they'll support each other. But having said that, it's not a piece of cake, football. They've still got to win games and make the right signings, and I'll be looking on with interest from afar to see, if things do work out for them, because without a shadow of a doubt, they're in the top 6 in the country, not in the championship, in the country, for the infrastructure, the academy, the facilities, the fans. We went to Bodmin and Tavistock pre-season, and I think we took 4,000 fans. We had an open day in my village college. We had an open day training session, and when we turned up, if an ice cream man had been there, he'd have been a millionaire. I have never seen so many families that went to Cornwall for a week. They all owe me big time, because they got fabulous weather for a week, and it was an amazing week. The only downside on it is I had to pull Snodgrass off the training ground because he had to talk to Norwich, and that was a major blow, which put a damper on it, really. But it was a fabulous time. The fans are brilliant. There are so many of them, and majority of fans know what kind of job I did. I did a good job in the circumstances, having to deal with the chairman and the owners and the new owners, etc. I think I say in my book, I remember one day I was speaking to 3 different people who claimed they were buying the club, 3 different groups. I rang Sean Harvey up. Sean, what do I do? I've got 3 different people. Keep talking to him, he said. Keep talking to him. And that's, people don't see that side, I think, but fabulous club.